Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Wednesday, July 8th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. New battles are emerging tonight with the coronavirus, from increased conditions in hospitals to presidential pressure to reopen our schools. More on those issues in a moment. But first, county officials late today announced 264 new cases and 7 more people have died from the virus. This all comes as local and state officials wrestle with the ongoing spike in cases and how to handle educating our kids. More now from KPBS reporter John Carroll.
When we launched the nation's first stay-at-home order on March 19th, its purpose was foundational, was to save lives and to better prepare our healthcare delivery system.
And that's just what the governor says the state has been doing over the last nearly 4 months. Place, space, people is what he calls it, finding more space in hospitals and other healthcare facilities, and making sure there are enough people to staff them, preparing for the kind of COVID numbers no one wanted to see, the kind we're now experiencing.
So you're seeing the total number of hospitalized increasing to 6,100. Again, that represents a 44% increase over a 2-week period. We're seeing ICU admissions increase over the course of a 2-week period in this new data set that's coming out today at 34%.
The president and CEO of the California Hospital Association says not only our capacity, but the system of treating COVID patients has greatly improved over the last several months. Carmela Coyle says hospitals now have much more personal protective equipment available, and staff have been cross-trained.
Hospitals are also partnering together so that we can balance the load of COVID-positive patients, as we're doing right now in Imperial County.
The governor was asked about a tweet from President Trump this morning that demanded states reopen schools in the fall or face financial consequences. Newsom was unimpressed.
So what we need to address is safely reopening the schools. And we need to make that a foundational principle. That, to me, is non-negotiable. I'm not worried about the latest tweets, and I can give you ad nauseum examples of why.
Newsom went on to promise that students would be learning this fall, one way or another. John Carroll, KPBS News.
The county is setting aside $17 million in CARES Act funding to help struggling businesses during the pandemic. It's part of a new small business stimulus program. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman says places can now start applying for the aid.
The relief is needed immediately. As you could see, the only way a business can stay alive is by getting customers in and generating some revenue.
Juan Magana is the owner of Sierra Madre Cantina, a 5,000 square foot Mexican restaurant in Escondido.
It seems like every week there's some sort of, change.
He says it's been tough trying to adapt from closing early to now once again having to shutter their dining room.
Now we get the orders that we can no longer serve inside, that we can only do to-go orders and any outside dining. My place isn't set up for outside dining.
Just in the last 24 hours, Magana has worked with his landlord to set up this pop-up patio.
So you go from an occupancy of 180 with a 5,000 square feet to, I'm not exactly sure how much square feet's out here, but at best we could put 28 people here. The only way I can stay alive and bring people in is by, establishing something out on this area.
Now Magana is looking to apply for a grant from the county's small business stimulus program.
Any help is helpful to cover the expenses.
Businesses applying for the grant money must have 100 or fewer employees, be headquartered within the county, and have been open for at least a year. Owners must also prove financial hardship.
We're a dine-in restaurant, and we don't do much to go.
The county is urging business owners to apply early. Applications for grant money are available now through October 16th, but restaurants say they need relief now.
It's not something like, hey, I'm going to fill this out, maybe 2 or 3 months down there I can get the help. No, it's if the help's needed now.
In the meantime, eateries like Sierra Madre Cantina are just trying to make things work and are hoping locals will support them during this uncertain time.
We depend on our customers to come on in here and keep us alive. You know, we're not large chains. I'm not saying that they're not suffering, but, you know, we're small mom and pops, and it's a little bit more difficult. So the only thing I can say is if you know, for those that are out there and still want to come out and, you know, grab a bite to eat and get a drink and whatnot, you know, come join us.
$17 million is being evenly split between the county's 5 supervisor districts for this stimulus program. Officials say each county supervisor will ultimately make decisions on which businesses get this grant funding. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Today, the U.S. surpassed 3 million confirmed cases of COVID-19. This comes as White House officials continue to push for additional phased reopenings. Camila Bernal has more.
As the number of COVID-19 cases in the U.S. hits new records, the White House Coronavirus Task Force meets at the U.S. Department of Education.
It's time for us to get our kids back to school.
The briefing focusing on reopening schools and doing it safely.
They must fully open and they must be fully operational. And how that happens is best left to education and community leaders.
Before the meeting, President Trump tweeting his disagreement with CDC guidelines for opening schools, and in another tweet saying he may cut off funding if the schools don't open. All this as the country reaches 3 million COVID-19 cases, and at least 24 states have paused or rolled back reopening plans. New cases in the U.S. continue to rise at a record rate, with the country reporting more than 60,000 cases Tuesday, its highest single daily count since the pandemic began.
It's a dire situation, and if people don't observe very careful social distancing, it will get even worse.
Still, the White House says it sees some promising signs and is confident about the road ahead.
We slowed the spread before, and we can do it again.
Camila Bernal, KPBS News.
After President Trump tweeted that he disagreed with the CDC guidelines for safely reopening schools because they are very tough and expensive, the agency said it would issue new recommendations. And a new Trump administration policy would force international college students out of the country if they don't attend in-person classes this fall. KPBS education reporter Joe Hong spoke with university administrators about their reaction to this surprising announcement.
UC San Diego has more than 5,600 international students whose futures could be threatened by a sudden change in policy from Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. It requires international students to take at least one in-person or hybrid class in the fall. Students who can't comply with the new rule will be forced to transfer to another college or leave the United States.
So the announcement on Monday came as a surprise, I think, to many of us in higher education.
Dulce Dorado is the director of the International Students and Programs Office at UC San Diego.
Our quarter doesn't begin until late September, so there's still some time in terms of the university really trying to assess what enrollment looks like, and then, what course offerings may need to be adjusted or what additional course offerings will need to be made.
Both UC San Diego and San Diego State University issued statements on Tuesday that criticized the new rule for creating confusion for students amid the global pandemic. SDSU officials advised students not to make any sudden decisions or changes to their academic schedules and to not make plans to leave the country. UC San Diego's Dorado encouraged students who need help to reach out to their academic advisors.
I want to say is that they're welcome here, and we want to make sure that we're here to support them in every way that we can.
Joe Hong, KPBS News.
A recent study into COVID-related discrimination found that Asians are 2.5 times more likely to experience harassment than whites, followed by blacks and Latinos. That's according to a survey of 7,000 people across the country conducted by the Center for Economic and Social Research at USC. Since the pandemic began, 1 in 3 Black, Asian, and Latino people have experienced at least one incident of COVID-related discrimination. That's compared to 1 in 5 white people.
Another finding that we had is the frontline workers who work outside all the time and who wear face masks actually are more susceptible to the discrimination as well.
Researchers determined the overall percentage of people who experienced harassment peaked in April, but racial disparities persist. Promising more transparency, the San Diego Police Department has just released video of another officer-involved shooting. We want to warn you, the body cam and surveillance video may be considered graphic. On Sunday, 3 officers opened fire on a man who was under arrest at the department headquarters. Police say he slipped out of a set of handcuffs, grabbed an officer's gun, and then fired at least 1 round. The 25-year-old man is expected to survive his injuries. Another Padres player has tested positive for the coronavirus. The team announced today that recently acquired infielder Jorge Mateo contracted the virus. He joins outfielder Tommy Pham, who tested positive last week. The 25-year-old Mateo was acquired from the Oakland Athletics. He has not played in the major leagues. Paving the way for a more sustainable future. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson shows us how recycled plastic could help build roads across California.
You can see we've already put 0.9 kilograms into this.
Chris Sparks is bagging little granules of plastic waste. It's the key ingredient for his company's asphalt. Asphalt that could be widely used in California and possibly the rest of the nation in a couple of years.
We're identifying manufacturers and certain folks in the industry that have this sort of byproduct that are dumping it in the landfills. We're working with them to eliminate the fees that they're paying, those tip fees to dump this material, saying, hey, let us take that. We can use it for something productive, take it out of the landfills, save you some money.
Sparks says the plastic replaces oil in the asphalt slurry and it keeps plastic out of the waste stream. State Senator Ben Huesa says the idea originated with local high school students. He's carrying legislation that could make this product the standard for asphalt repair and replacement.
Through this bill, we are seeking to expand on current state efforts in order to reduce the cost of road construction and increase the strength and durability of our roads, all the while finding alternative uses for waste plastic otherwise destined for a landfill.
Caltrans will begin studying this material in January. They could have standards that can be in place statewide by 2023. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Dining out in Poway is going to be more like a picnic for a while. Last night, the City Council approved a plan to get picnic tables and lend them to restaurants. About 16 hours later, the Philanthropies restaurant in Poway was the first to get a delivery of tables. Indoor dining is off limits throughout the county for 3 weeks. Mayor Steve Voss came up with the idea and says this is a lifeline for these restaurants that might have to shut down without it.
These businesses are like family to us, and we want to make sure not only the businesses thrive, but the folks that work there. They've got to pay for a roof over their head and food on their own table, and we want to do everything we can to help them.
And Voss says this is a win-win situation because the tables will be repurposed for use in local parks when they are no longer needed at the restaurants. And it looks like we're in for one more warm day before things really heat up across the county. Justin Pavic has your forecast.
Well, I hope everyone's having a fantastic Wednesday. We are going to be following, again, some changes with our temperatures over the course of the next couple of days. We'll also notice after some coastal cloudiness Thursday morning, tomorrow morning, less in the way of coastal cloudiness Friday. Temperatures will be heating up 5, even 10 degrees above normal late weekend of the weekend, and then widespread heat, especially over the interior. Starting up Saturday morning, going through Monday, there are excessive heat watches where some spots can again top 110 to even 115 degrees. Let's talk about the short term for tonight. We still have a bit of an onshore flow, so coastal cloudiness is still going to be a possibility. Oceanside back to San Diego, either side of 60 degrees. Borrego Springs tops off at 110 as we venture our way into Thursday. Mount Laguna warming up to 81, San Diego at 75. All right, so what are we talking about here late week? Well, jet stream retreats off to the north. Upper level high strengthens, and that's going to send building heat into the area. Some very meager amounts of moisture Friday into Saturday. Not looking at enough to pop off thunderstorms over the mountainous terrain, but perhaps there can be some cloudiness. All right, let's talk about the coast. Notice the warming trend here into the 80s we go. Again, Saturday into Sunday. Again, mostly sunny skies, heating up inland as well, more markedly here Friday into Saturday. Saturday and Sunday will be the peak again of the heat, and that's of course why there are excessive heat watches out well to our east. Mountains again warming up as well. Mid-80s will stay there into early weekend. Again, can't rule out a spotty thunderstorm Saturday, but again, the moisture is not going to be overly abundant, so something we'll continue to follow for you. Desert locations toward dangerous heat as we venture our way through the weekend. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Justin Pavic. Back to you.
Today, the Supreme Court upheld Trump administration rules that allow employers to opt out of providing free birth control to their workers over religious or moral objections. Coverage was required under the Affordable Care Act's no-cost contraceptive mandate. The 7-2 decision clears the way for expanded exemptions for employers who have religious or moral objections to the mandate. The ruling means between 75,000 and 125,000 women could lose coverage. After the San Diego-based USS Roosevelt was hit by a coronavirus outbreak, the Navy says it's taking extraordinary measures to keep it from happening again. 2 Navy admirals in charge of a South China Sea exercise say their aircraft carrier strike groups are in a high state of readiness. All sailors are required to wear face coverings. They've also spaced out meal times, instituted social distancing, and brought aboard specialists and extra health personnel. The Roosevelt is set to return to San Diego tomorrow. If you live in Chula Vista, you may have already seen a drone in the air. Now that may become more common. KPBS science and technology reporter Shalina Chatlani says the Chula Vista Police Department has been approved to use drones in more enforcement situations.
The advantage to this drone over all other drones is it has autonomy, so it has the ability to have collision avoidance.
Lieutenant Jim Horse is the Chula Vista Police Department drone supervisor. He says the station has been using nearly 24 autonomous small drones, like this one, and larger ones to assist law enforcement.
Pretty much anything that people call the police department to report. So it could be a suspicious person, it could be anything that we want to be able to use the drone to get more visual intelligence on.
The San Diego region is one of 9 jurisdictions approved by the Federal Aviation Administration to try out drones in different industries via a pilot program. That's how Chula Vista PD has been testing out these machines. But now they've received a 2-year-long waiver from the FAA to use the drones outside that program and with a loosening of certain restrictions. Now they can fly the small drones outside their line of sight. Horse says the department sees drones as a de-escalation tool.
By having the drones, officers can now have more information than going to a call without information. And so they can have visual information as to what's going on prior to getting there. They can make a better decision on how to handle that call.
In fact, the police department has an online tracker program that shows how many drone flights resulted in fewer police patrol squads being sent out. Still, some academics say drones can be seen as a form of surveillance, and that having a video doesn't necessarily mean that officers are making neutral decisions.
Say you get a call about someone who's acting erratic. Like, what would a drone be able to see that would discern a person screaming and waving their hands around as as someone who needs intervention by police versus a mental health team? Like, how would the visuality of a camera help with that?
Lilia Rani is a professor of communication and technology at UC San Diego. She says even if officers are using video to see whether a situation is dangerous, human bias doesn't just go away.
Okay, what kind of visual symbols are you going to look for to discern the difference between dangerous and non-dangerous?
Lieutenant Jim Horse says the drones are intended to reduce the likelihood of unnecessary escalation, but he says even with tech, there's of course always human error. And anytime someone calls the police, they have to respond.
I don't think there's going to be a case in which you can say that we shouldn't have responded with the drone and still sent officers because the drone just gave us more info. the officers responding are still going to be held accountable for whatever decisions they make.
Data on where the drones go is online. Horst says the video itself is kept secure and treated as evidence, much like body camera video is. And it can be requested by the public and will go through courts if necessary. Shalina Chatlani, KPBS News.
At the White House today, President Trump and his Mexican counterpart celebrated the beginning of a new trade agreement. President Trump and Mexican President López Obrador signed a joint declaration to mark the beginning of the USMCA. That's the trade agreement that replaces NAFTA. This is the Mexican leader's first trip abroad since taking office more than a year and a half ago. Another sign of turbulence in the travel industry thanks to COVID. United Airlines is notifying 36,000 employees that they could lose their jobs. That's nearly half the airline's U.S. staff, including flight attendants, customer service and gate agents, maintenance workers, and pilots. United officials say they still hope to limit the number of layoffs by offering early retirement, but are required to give 60 days notice ahead of mass job cuts. Disneyland may have delayed its reopening, but Disney World is going ahead with its plans. The Orlando, Florida park says it's ready to welcome back guests this weekend with new safety measures in place. But as Ezzy Castro reports, not everyone is happy about it.
The union that represents about 600 actors here at Disney claims that it's too soon to reopen because of the rise in cases across the state. There's even been petitions signed by cast members demanding for a date change, but Disney is set to open no matter what this week.
Welcome home. Welcome home.
Walt Disney World putting out this video online featuring workers getting ready to welcome back guests. Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom will open this Saturday, then Disney's Hollywood Studios and Epcot on July 15th. But guests will need a park reservation to go. Monique Clark tells us she got her reservation for this weekend, but is worried about the virus.
I'm not so much worried about things that will have to be done differently, like face masks and social distancing. That doesn't bother me, but really it's just other people not following the rules that makes me nervous.
With Disney Springs opening back in May, we got to see some of the new restrictions the company put in place for guests. They will be required to wear a face mask and go through temperature screenings before stepping inside, and capacity will be limited. But some workers say it's not enough. The Actors Equality Association, which represents hundreds of actors at the resort, says not enough is being done to protect staff, considering the number of cases of COVID-19 across the state. So the monorails and the ferry boats will be running back up tomorrow, and on Thursday and Friday, annual pass holders will be able to get a preview of the parks ahead of the reopening officially on Saturday.
And that was Ezzy Castro reporting. Disneyland decided to put off its planned reopening, initially set for July 17th. We're still waiting on a new date. But Legoland won't open until August at the earliest. But Lego fans can get their fix another way. The Carlsbad theme park is opening its hotel on July 17th. The buffet-style breakfast and interactions with costumed characters will not be allowed. But the pool will be open, and a supply of Lego bricks are provided in every room. Legoland had recently reopened Sea Life Aquarium, but it had to close when the county went on the state watch list. Country superstar Blake Shelton will host a drive-in concert at over 300 locations across the country, including here in San Diego. The concert will be pre-taped and feature Shelton's rock star girlfriend Gwen Stefani and fellow country star Trace Atkins. Each ticket will admit one car, truck, or SUV and up to 6 people. You can catch the show at the South Bay Drive-In on July 25th.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, coronavirus numbers reach new highs as the administration urges a return to schools this fall. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And here's another look at today's top stories. One day after a near record number of coronavirus cases, today's positive number seemed more manageable. This afternoon, San Diego County officials announced 264 new cases. 7 more people died from the virus. It comes as the U.S. surpassed 3 million total cases. A new Trump administration policy would force international college students out of the country if they don't attend in-person classes this fall. Both UC San Diego and San Diego State University issued statements criticizing the new rule for creating confusion for students amid the global pandemic. And the county is setting aside $17 million as part of a new small business stimulus program. Businesses applying for grant money must have 100 or fewer employees, be headquartered within the county, and have been open for at least a year. Owners must also prove financial hardship. In the Colombian city of Medellin, a mini market owner is using her dog to make deliveries. The 8-year-old chocolate lab named Eros makes his way through the hilly streets several times a day with a straw basket in his mouth. He takes vegetables, fruits, packaged foods to customers. With some practice, he has learned the names of customers who have given him treats and is able to go to their houses on his own. Now, Eros might not know he's an essential worker, but he is happy to get paid treats and head massages. Great story. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.